This is chapters 9-5 and 9-6 combined together, part 3. Please copy your cards so we can finish this lesson. Alright, to begin here on this third and final piece, I just want to make a distinction that there is a huge difference between the sine of A and finding the measure of angle A. Sine A is just a comparison. When I say sine A, that means I'm comparing two legs. Opposite over the hypotenuse. So I say sine A, again, I'm saying comparison. Opposite leg over the hypotenuse. If I say the measure of angle A is finding the actual angle measurement, that's what you need to do. So let's find the sine of A and the measure of angle A for this particular triangle ABC, right triangle ABC. Okay? We have the right angle at C. We need the two unknown values here. All right, so we need the measure of angle A and the measure of angle B. Okay, are unknown, I should say, but we're actually finding, sine A and the measure of angle A. Let's start with the sine of A. Remember, the sine of A means to compare. So which leg or angle, am I referencing? I'm measuring or referencing angle A. And sine says if I want the sine of A, that means I'm doing the opposite leg. Sine of A is the opposite leg over the hypotenuse. And the question I'm thinking in my head is, which leg is opposite in reference to theta? And the leg opposite is going to be the 24. The hypotenuse is across on the right angle, so the 40 will be the hypotenuse. Okay? And there's your sine A opposite over the hypotenuse. So here it is. Sine A is opposite over hypotenuse, which is the 24 over the 40. If I convert that into a decimal, that's going to be 6/10. This sine A, again, sine A is just a ratio comparison. I'm comparing the opposite leg over the hypotenuse. Okay? If I say, I want you to tell me what degree measure is angle A, what's the measure of angle A, you go a little different. Okay? Okay, the measure of angle A is the inverse of whatever the comparison is. So, you've already done the sine of A. You've compared the opposite over the hypotenuse, and it comes out to be 6/10. Okay? If I say, I need the measure of angle A, all you do is the inverse of what opposite over hypotenuse is. It's 6/10. Your calculator does it for you. All you're going to do is just go inverse sine and put in the 6/10. So here we go. We take out our calculator. We've already did the comparison of opposite over the hypotenuse. That comparison is 24 over 40, or in decimal form, 6/10. But I want to know the measure of angle A, so I'm just going to take the inverse of sine times the 6/10. So here's my calculator. To do the inverse, normally we hit the sine, which is there. We don't want that. The inverse sign is you hit your shift key. Your shift key is the second button. If you have a TI-84, it's probably blue. You hit the shift key, the arrow up will flash. That lets you know you did the second function. You hit the shift key and then you hit sine again. It's in blue. Okay? There's your sine inverse right there. Okay? The inverse we wanted of 6/10. 0.6, and it will give us the angle measure, which is 36 and roughly 87/100 of a degree, or 36 and 9/10 degree. So we come back over, and we found that the inverse of 6/10, or the inverse of opposite over the hypotenuse, which is the 6/10, the inverse of the 6/10, we plug it into our calculator, is 36 and 9/10. And that's actually should be approximately. Okay, because we round it. So the measure of angle A, we can now come up here and say it's 36 and 9/10 degree. We can find the measure of angle B by triangle sum theorem. 90 plus 36 and 9/10, and then we subtract that away from 180, will tell us what angle B would be. Okay? So this is how we find the measure of angle A. The measure of angle A is we need the opposite over the hypotenuse. We find that in decimal form. And all you do is plug it into your calculator. Your calculator does everything else. You take the inverse, and then whatever opposite over the hypotenuse is, in this case it was 6/10, and our calculator said that it was 36 9/10. Let's try another one. All right. All right. So here we have this same triangle. And now let's say we need the sine of B and the measure of angle B. Let's first of all remember, sine B is different than the measure of angle B. Sine B means compare the two legs. Sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. Finding the measure of angle B means I want to know what's the angle's measure. Is it 32 degrees? Is it 88 degrees? What is the measure of angle B? Okay? So let's first find the sine of the comparison of the opposite over the hypotenuse. But notice it says go to angle B. So we have to reference from here angle B. We say, we label all the sides first. In reference to angle B, what's this 40 right here? And we write that in. That's going to be our hypotenuse. In reference to angle B, what is the 24? That's your adjacent leg. And again, in reference from angle B, what is the 32? It's opposite or across from angle B. And we know we want sine B, and we know sine says give us the opposite leg compared to the hypotenuse. And if we're comparing for the sine of B, the opposite in reference to angle B is going to be the 32 over the hypotenuse of 40. Okay? This is it as a fraction, and this is it 8/10 as a decimal. Okay? So now that's the sine of B. The sine of B is 8/10 or 32 over 40. Well, you would simplify that if you really leave it as a fraction. But this is the sine of B. It's 8/10 or 32/40. That's the sine of B. Now we need the measure of angle B. The measure of angle B is actually give me the degree value. Okay? To do the degree value, the measure of angle B is just take the inverse of whatever the opposite over the hypotenuse. First you have to find the opposite over the hypotenuse because it wants the sine. Okay? You plug this in the calculator again. The inverse is going to be, again, we don't want sine. That's not it. Okay? We want the inverse. You have to hit your shift key. It's blue. You have a whole lot of blue buttons on here on your calculator. Like you have 10 to the second power, you have parentheses, you have the inverse sign, you have list, quit. Anytime you want any of these blue buttons, you have to hit the shift key. Notice it, when I hit shift, it turns to an upward arrow, and I want the inverse of sine. Inverse sign is in blue, and so that lets me know I need to use the shift key to get all the blue stuff. All the blue stuff I have to get to, I want to hit the shift key. The inverse, it was 8/10. Close parentheses, and it's going to give me the angle measure, some number. It's 53 roughly and 1/10. So 53 and 1/10. Okay, so when I plug it in, the inverse of the opposite over the hypotenuse is 53 and 1/10 degree. And I'm going to put an approximation because I rounded again. And I'm just going to show you really quickly this here. This is the sine inverse of, really, I could have put this in the calculator, 32 over 40. And it should still give me the 53 and 1/10 because what sine? Opposite over the hypotenuse. Okay? And it should work out beautifully here. If I want the inverse, so hit shift, inverse, and what was that, 32 over 40. So the 32 divided by the 40, and it should work out just the same. If I close the parentheses, and we get the same thing because this is the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. All right? And there's the difference between sine A and the measure of angle A or angle B.